Russian forces attacked Chasiv Yar, a Ukrainian stronghold in eastern Ukraine just west of the ruins of Bakhmut. 3 months later this week, they finally captured the town's most vulnerable neighborhood, its canal district. But seizing this tiny part of Chasiv Yar, an industrial town that was once home to 12,000 people, cost the Russians thousands of casualties. The Russian military has reportedly lost 99,000 troops since the start of the Chasiv Yar campaign. And while not all of them died in and around Chasiv Yar, a significant portion of them certainly did. Russia has made some progress on the ground, and yet even this has come at massive costs, commented Mick Ryan, a retired Australian Army general. In expending so many lives for so little gain, Russia appears to have blown what might have been its last chance to strike a decisive blow against Ukraine in this war, Ryan added. Most likely, what happens next is what has been happening for months. Russian forces inch forward at enormous cost in people and equipment, while inflicting much lighter losses on Ukrainian forces. For every town, or even neighborhood, the Russians capture, they bury tens of thousands of their own troops. The Ukrainian garrison in Chasiv Yar hasn't stopped fighting. Ukrainian spokesperson Nazar Voloshin said the garrison retreated a few blocks to the west, across the north-south Siversky-Donets-Donbass Canal, because Russian bombs and artillery had destroyed all the buildings in the canal district. Russian bombs and artillery had destroyed all the buildings in the canal district. Defensive positions on the western side of the canal are easier to defend, as the Russian must first cross the canal, an awkward though not impossible maneuver, before directly assaulting Ukrainian lines. It might surprise some that the Ukrainian garrison, led by the Army's 41st and 67th Mechanized Brigades, 56th Motorized Brigade, and 5th Assault Brigade, as well as the 241st Territorial Defense Brigade, held out as long as it did in the isolated and exposed Canal District. As early as late May, Ukrainian analysis group Frontelligence Insight predicted Chasiv Yar will eventually be lost to Russian forces. But the garrison fought on for another 6 weeks. It helped that, in mid-April, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden began shipping munitions to Ukraine, again following the collapse of a 6-month effort by Russia-friendly Republican lawmakers to withhold aid. It has also helped the Ukrainian defense that Russia's heavy losses are making Russian regiments and brigades weaker, even as the Kremlin manages, just barely, to recruit fresh troops to replace the dead and wounded. That's because the pace of the losses compels Moscow to rush fresh troops to the front without adequate leadership, training, or equipment. Russia is less able to build a better quality, large force that might be able to undertake larger-scale offensive operations, Ryan explained. That's cold comfort to the Ukrainian troops defending Chasiv Yar. They fight their battles block by block regardless of the wider strategic context, and more brutal block battles are likely in Chasiv Yar as the Russians look to extend their gains in one of the few places they're advancing at all. According to the Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies, Russian forces will soon begin attacks across the Siversky-Donets-Donbass Canal in central Chasiv Yar from their positions in the canal neighborhood. On 8th July, the most important updates come from the Toretsk direction. Here, Russians have taken advantage of a botched Ukrainian brigade rotation and took control of a Ukrainian stronghold by sneaking through abandoned pipes. This direction has been relatively static since the start of the Russian invasion. Deeply layered Ukrainian fortifications here, stemming from the war in the Donbass, proved insurmountable for Russian forces, as they were not able to break through in the initial stages of the war. As such, this direction did not see any large Russian offensives and was categorized as a calmer portion of the front. Because of this, a Ukrainian commander decided to rotate the battle-worn Ukrainian 41st Mechanized Brigade from the Chasiv Yar direction to here and send the fresher 24th Motorized Brigade to reinforce the fighting to the north. Lower-level Ukrainian commanders warned of the dangers of such a simultaneous rotation, stating it would undoubtedly lead to positional losses. Still, a certain Ukrainian commander, later replaced by Zelensky due to his failures, went ahead with the plan anyway. By good reconnaissance or leaked intel, Russians caught on to the Ukrainian rotation. Before the newly arrived Ukrainian soldiers were able to familiarize themselves with their new location and set up an organized defense, Russians unleashed a massive artillery barrage in preparation for their coming assault. Russians launched attacks from two vectors on the settlement of Pivnishne from the north and south to catch Ukrainians by surprise with a sudden pincer maneuver. In the northern axis of attack, Russians used an abandoned pipe that ran from Mayorsk to the water pump station, which Ukrainians had transformed into a stronghold. Russians used this pipe to move elite stormtroopers directly into the fortified position, surprising Ukrainian defenders and leading to the Russian capture of this position.